Brace yourselves, my fellow One Piece fans, because we're about to see Scopper Gaban in action, the Straw Hats under Colin's leadership making a move, but perhaps most exciting of all, Frankie is the Iron Giant of today's third world. Chapter 1144 begins with a very surprising revelation, as Frankie is led by Ripley to continue the exploration of the Atom Tree. What do we find then? None other than another Iron Giant. I have so many thoughts about this. First of all, my immediate reaction was, this looks awfully similar to the Iron Giant, to the ancient robot from Laputa, Castle in the Sky. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, then you must be new here, because I have discussed the similarities between our favorite series One Piece and the great classic Studio Ghibli film, in fact the very first Studio Ghibli film, Laputa, Castle in the Sky. And if you are indeed new here, then please do subscribe, because I would love to continue discussing One Piece with you. And if you have not yet watched that video, or if you need a refresher, I highly recommend you to check it out. The connections, the similarities are uncanny. I'll link it for you in the description box below. So this ancient robot looks even more like the Iron Giant from the Studio Ghibli film than Emmett. And we also find out that it's much older than Emmett, estimated to date back to around 3,000 years ago, to at least 3,000 years ago, meaning this places the Iron Giant within the Age of Heavens, which could be potentially equated to the First World according to the Elbafian legend, and I'm sure you're thinking the same thing I am. This Iron Giant must be the automata companion of Nika, much like how Emmet was the Iron Giant companion of Joy Boys. Then, that's suggesting that we have an automata companion for Luffy of our own, our very own cyborg Frankie. It's clear that we are leading heavily into the theme of cyclical history, and there is no mistake that that must be the message that Oda is hinting at, especially by leading Frankie on a solo expedition so that he's the first Straw Hat member to find this ancient relic. Ripley even points out the connection between Frankie and this Iron Giant herself. I remember when we first saw the mural, there were some theories that Frankie is actually a part of the mural, not just that he is hiding whatever's in front of him, but that he actually might play a part. And it seems like that may really be true, because Frankie himself is part of the third world as the third world's Iron Giant. Props to whoever thought of that, because that was some super advanced observation haki. But there's more, because I think this uncovery presents us with so many more exciting possibilities about what we might find out about the past, as well as what we could get in the future. Because for one, this simply isn't a robot. This is some sort of technological facility, a science lab. One that may even represent the factories that we saw back in the mural, the ones on the bottom right hand corner, and it may also be how the likes of Emmett was created. What if this facility is a robot creation facility? Some sort of lab where throughout history there have been many Iron Giants created. That could also explain why this is at Elbaf, which is a question that was raised in this chapter. What is this robot lab doing in the land of giants? But maybe it makes perfect sense that it's here at Elbaf. What better place to create giant robots than in a land full of giants who are of the size and have the strength necessary to assemble the pieces of a giant? Because this robo lab looks even bigger than Ripley. Or maybe this lab is here at Elbaf because the robots have been actually modeled after this legendary warrior giant race. And if this is a lab that has existed for at least 3,000 years, meaning that it predates the Void Century, then maybe this is actually what gave birth to the technological advancements of the ancient kingdom. Okay, so hear me out. Based on our interpretation of the mural and of the Harley, it seems like that the first world may also have been quite technologically advanced. And now with this new reveal of yet another Iron Giant, that certainly seems to be very true. The first world had technological capabilities of its own, which also seems like it might be based in our real world history as well, because I have since found out that this idea of the Iron Giant, or this idea of ancient robots, the automata, this has existed, it's been around since the age of classical ancient Greek history. But then, we know from the Harley that something happened to bring that first world, to bring that age to an end. And we know that the end of that first era was followed by a sort of darkness, a void. The scientific knowledge and the wisdom of the first world was lost. It was forgotten, and maybe purposely so, because we know of the relationship relationship between Nika and the Elbafians, or at least that the Elbafians are a culture that is confirmed to have worshipped the sun deity for a very, very long time. It's plausible that the Elbafians were in fact entrusted with keeping the lab, keeping this ancient facility, keeping the ancient technology safe from the rest of the world because Nika didn't want this ancient knowledge or their technological advancements and capabilities falling into the wrong hands. And this is a responsibility that the Elbafians successfully fulfilled, and a job that is probably most fitting for the Elbafians. I mean, think about it. If the remains of all ancient knowledge, all ancient technology was kept away, kept safe at Elbaf, who's really going to challenge Elbaf to figure it out? Warland Elbaf, a kingdom of fierce warrior giants. A land that would not have been explored by foreigners. Because who wants to invade a land of giants? That is, of course, until came Joy Boy. We also now know that Joy Boy was named the first pirate, the first person to set out and sail the seas as a pirate. Now, we don't really know what being called a pirate exactly entailed, what it meant back in those days if he was the first pirate, but what if this is a reference to his adventurous personality, his thirst for exploration? What if Joy Boy was the first non-Elbafian to set foot on Elbaf since the end of the First World? Meaning that Joy Boy went to Elbaf, uncovered this ancient robo-lab, and he took away with him the secrets of the ancient technologies, and this is what resulted in his ancient kingdom becoming the great advanced civilization that we know it to have been. Joy Boy's uncovery was the breath in the void that the Harley speaks of. And if Joy Boy and the ancient kingdom were able to harness this knowledge for their great development, just imagine what this could potentially mean about the present. Because you know what I'm thinking?
You thinking what I'm thinking, B1?
Power-ups. If Frankie is the modern-day Iron Giant, then we need to deck him out. In fact, regardless of whether he is continuing the cycle of the ancient robot companion or not, Frankie is in need of an upgrade. I know I'm not the only one that felt slightly disappointed that Frankie didn't get an upgrade by the end of the Egghead Island arc. I mean, with Egghead being the future island and all, with Vegapunk, the laboratory of the genius scientist, it was something that all fans were expecting, and so it was quite surprising and somewhat disappointing when Frankie's upgrade didn't happen. But now, well, now I'm thinking, all praise Oda, ever the master of delivering in ways that we don't expect. Seriously, the man is the greatest tease, but simultaneously he always delivers major payoffs in ways that we do not expect. Because giving Frankie an upgrade at Egghead, now that would have been too obvious, too expected. But now, here at Elbaf, where Frankie has access to not only Vegapunk's brain, but also the resources, the quality materials that the ancient civilization, the OG advanced society were dealing with themselves. Now that's exciting. But of course, that's all just speculation for now, so please let me know what you think about the ancient robot, about this Iron Giant, because I would love to hear your thoughts. In the meantime, let me share more of my thoughts on the rest of chapter 1144. So we see the fight progress against the demonic creations that Killingham has conjured. I think it's worth noting that the demonic Nika is one of the only few creatures that we didn't actually see in this chapter, and that might be quite meaningful, especially given Gunka's response that we will talk about later. I have to say, it's kind of refreshing to see the Straw Hats being treated very differently here at Elbaf. In most arcs, the Straw Hats are usually quickly enlisted whenever disaster strikes. The residents of a kingdom or the civilians usually rely on the Straw Hats, viewing them as their savior, as their heroes. Whereas here at Elbaf, the Straw Hats are just treated as celebrities who should only have fun and aren't expected to lift a single finger. And that makes sense given that Elbaf is full of warriors, warrior giants, where except for the current generation of children, these giants are all capable of fighting. Very capable. Most of them being stronger than most of our Straw Hats. But I have to say, it was kind of funny though, because it's almost like the Straw Hats were given the Colin treatment, because we also see that Colin was told that he's not allowed to fight because you're just a child. And I know that's not exactly what JoyGirl was telling the Straw Hats, but it still made me chuckle. I have however read that JoyGirl's reaction to the Straw Hats, telling them that they should not fight, that might be actually a little suspicious. And I have to say that that's not how I initially read it. That's not how I initially interpreted the situation. But now that theory has definitely awoken something in me, but I will wait for further proof before I start to accuse this legendary chieftain. I mean, after all, this isn't Angie. Anyways, regardless of JoyGirl's orders, the Straw Hats are definitely getting involved. And it's so cute that they're teaming up with Colin. Colin reminds me of a mini and simultaneously a giant version of Usopp from the beginning of the series. And hopefully this awakens a nostalgic drive out of Usopp because, come on, what was that? Why is Usopp only half-heartedly offering to help? I mean, this is your arc, my man. We are all waiting for you to step up. But I guess with the way that things panned out between Frankie and his power-ups at Egghead, I'm seriously starting to question how Usopp's going to be handled at Elbaf. I'm not giving up hope though, because Usopp definitely did step up by the end of this chapter. I mean, you know what? It seems like all of the Straw Hats are each getting some of their good moments, especially in this chapter. Practically every Straw Hat that was featured in this chapter got their own little moment. You know, Frankie uncovering this facility, Nami, her fierce maternal instinct coming into play, Jinbei's words of wisdom, Brook's intuition that there must be two intruders, this leading to Usopp deducing that there is a much more sinister scheme afoot. So it's seeming like the Straw Hats are going to be the one to uncover the strategy, the master plan that the Holy Knights have put into action. And I'm really excited to see what their next steps are going to be whilst flying under the banner, or temporarily flying under the banner of the Colin Pirates. I'm equally excited to see what Colin's made of. He is the offspring between a giant and the left-hand man of the Pirate King. Those are some serious genes, and I actually have Colin making an impact on my bingo card for 2025, and I'm betting that we're gonna be able to cross it off soon. What would be really fun is to see some sort of tag team effort between Colin and his father, because we now also see that Scopper Gaban is getting into action. I have to say that I wasn't expecting Scopper to get involved so soon, but this is another great case, another great example of Oda finding ways to deliver in ways that we didn't expect. After that little tease, just that brief tease of a very brief clash against Luffy, one that left us feeling perhaps slightly disappointed, definitely wanting more. We are finally getting the chance to see Scopper, the Mountain Eater, the Pirate King's left-hand man. We're finally getting the chance to see him in action, and I am ready for it. Especially because I'm sure you know by now that I am eagerly anticipating a matchup between Summers and Scopper, each of them battling out their respective ideals on love. And I suppose with the mention of Summers, that brings me to the topic of the God's Knights. Most of all, Ganko. Ganko is seriously being developed to be the most interesting of the Holy Knights. This chapter, we find out that Ganko has a post-meal ritual or a post-meal hobby of listening to music. And even more interestingly, we find out that Ganko's favorite song is New World. And that is oh so significant for oh so many reasons. On one hand, it could be a simple callback to Brook's Soul King past. You may remember that New World is one of Brook's Soul King songs. In fact, it's the final song that Brook performed during his performance before running away to reunite with the rest of the Straw Hats at Sabaody. And we were told back then that Brook, as Soul King, had recorded his songs into tone dials and that it was a brilliant success. He had made millions in sales. Whereas the TD headphones that Ganko is wearing, the ones that Summers made a point to mention, well, that's also a nice little callback to an explanation about tone dials and how they can be used, which Oda gave us back in SBS volume 64. We found out about the evolution of the tone dial technology so that they could be used both as headphones as well as a stereo. So yes, this little segment is a nice callback, but we also know that things are not that simple. New World is such a meaningful song. New World is a song all about Luffy and the Straw Hats and their journey, their embrace of the new world. It's a song about the returned Nika, a figure that only a couple chapters prior, Ganko said is her greatest fear. Now, I recently did a deep dive into the Holy Knights, or into each of the Holy Knights, and part of that video, I shared a theory, my speculation, that each Holy Knight represents one of the Western zodiac symbols. In that video, I said that Ganko Ganko may represent the Gemini because there is a clear theme of duality going on with her character. And I have to say, this reveal of her favorite song, that only has me more convinced about my speculations about Ganko. This duality of fearing Nika but then loving the song New World. I mean, she obviously knows who they are, what they represent, and yet she likes Brooke's song? My speculation, my current theory is that Ganko is not originally of the Celestial Dragon class. Most likely she was a slave, potentially even related to Koala. But unlike the other slaves throughout history who have come to believe and rejoice in the legend of Nika, with Ganko becoming one of the Holy Knights, she was indoctrinated with the ideology of the Celestial Dragons, which has resulted in her fearing the Warrior of Liberation. But her choice in music speaks volumes about who Ganko really is at heart. She may have been indoctrinated to hate Nika, to fear Nika, but her natural instincts, in her heart of hearts, there is a deep instinctual attraction to Nika because of who she is, because of what her background is. And I really can't wait to see this conflict. I can't wait to see this inner tension being further developed. Where will Oda take her character development? You'll know if you watch that Holy Knights discussion that I also do think there is a chance that Ganko may actually switch sides by the end of the story, especially once she actually witnesses Luffy in action. And look, if you haven't watched that video, then I'll also link that one below for you to check out as well. But in the meantime, let me know what you think about chapter 1144 by leaving a comment below. If you enjoyed today's discussion, please like the video, share the video, and please do subscribe so that we can continue discussing One Piece together, and also so you can help me get to 100,000 subscribers. You can also help support the channel further like these wonderful people by becoming a Patreon or channel member. But as always, thank you so much for being here and listening to another one of my ramblings. This is JoyGirl, and I'll see you again soon.